Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Richest Men in Town podcast. I'm Mike Freeman, and along with my good friend and co-host Tyler Gould, we're excited to welcome you to our little podcast project. Tyler and I are just a couple of middle-aged husbands and dads driven to live our best lives. We want to be better every day, so here we'll be sitting down with great people. Not famous people, but great people that we admire, to learn their secret to living the rich life. Probably not the rich life you're thinking of. Our guests come in humbled and surprised at the invitation and hopefully leave feeling proud and grateful, realizing just how good they really have it. So pull up a chair, stay a while, and raise a glass with us as we toast our guests to the richest men in town.
Mike Freeman.
Tyler Gould.
What a night, man. We got to spend some time with Dan Funk on this episode of Richest Men in Town. And
might be my new favorite episode.
It just might be mine too, man. It was fun, it was emotional, and it was powerful. What are some of your takeaways, and what are some of the things that you enjoyed about your time with Dan?
Okay, so when we call people onto this show, they bear it all, right? They come in and they're vulnerable, and we've acknowledged that that's where they're most powerful. We have not heard a story like Dan Funk before. When we talk about hard things, we've had some Hall of Fame hard things.
Yeah,
right? Our guests have gone through and they've endured, and they've learned from these challenges, and it's made them the richest men in town. But Dan Funk shares losing everything.
Yeah.
Coming to a point where he loses everything Job style. Right?
Yeah.
And it really made me think of a line from Rudyard Kipling's If. Hearing him tell that kind of the tragic unraveling, really, of things. Rudyard Kipling has this line talking about how to teach your son to be a man. You could watch the things you gave your life to broken and stoop and build them up with worn out tools. And that line came to my mind as we were listening to Dan tell that story. His is a story of faith. His is a story of trying to meet expectations, unrealistic expectations, where those expectations and pressure come from. He shines a light on church culture, and man, we got to be better, right? And I think that if this episode is filling our hearts with a desire to be better, then we're doing our job. And definitely walk away from our time with Dan Funk freaking fired up to be better and to do better.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I loved the story he tells, right? And the way that he tells it, and he'll tell you, he's in the middle of building right now. He's in the middle of trying to get what he wants to be and reach those goals.
And in the process, his entire worldview has changed.
And
his entire priority structure is different as a result of the hardships that he's gone through.
Right. And I love, you ask him a question at one point. You ask him, if you talk to someone who's going through the same thing that you've gone through, what would you say to them? Right. And so many times we think about what we would say, what's the speech we would give, what's the quote we would recite. And
what's scripture? What's the sermon?
Dan says, I would give him a hug, right? And to me, that's it, man. If we were all huggers like Dan, right, things would be a lot better.
We were even debriefing and thinking about, instead of a ministering list, can we just, you and I can sit down with a prayer in our hearts and say, who needs a hug right now? That's a powerful list.
Amen.
And if we can act on that prompting and just, in a COVID sensitive way, hand out some hugs and just let people know that we don't need to understand everything.
Yeah.
We don't need to know what you're going through. We can just be with you and let you know, because I think he backed it up, right? I'll give you a hug, and then I'm here for you.
Yeah.
I'm
I
here
don't
to
think,
let you know. And guess what? The hug tells them that.
yeah, we don't have to have the answer, right? We don't have to have a ready answer in our hip pocket ready to go.
And I would say this, one of the key takeaways, and this is something that I'm going to put into practice in my home tonight. We pray for people that are struggling, right? That God might help them, that God might give them strength, that they might feel close, that they might have guidance. We need to be praying that we might know how to help them. And that's a shift. And I learned that listening to Dan. Dan's story, I see myself in Dan's story, not in a good way.
Yeah.
I see myself as that church-going person, making sure that everything looks good and walking right by people that need things, like hugs.
Yep. Yeah,
Powerful.
I agree. It was a night not to be forgotten soon, right? So it was good stuff. So listen, let's take some time to compile that list of people we can hug when COVID allows us to do so again, right? But let's be thinking about how we can impact people and just let them know that we love them. Right?
Well, and I think too, what can we do in this COVID environment that would be the equivalent of the hug, right? Like if you cut me open, one of my core beliefs that I've preached before is that the best answer is a simple one. And it doesn't get any simpler than a hug.
I agree.
So let's find that equivalent so that we can just let people know. Maybe it's a text, right? Can we do something to let them know that we are thinking about them? Because, man, look around the world, right?
Yeah.
The world has a lot of folks that could learn lessons that Dan Funk teaches tonight. There's a lot of people that are going through a hard time, could use a hug.
Yeah, look, I think our listeners are going to enjoy Dan. He's a character. He's got personality. He's fun.
He's got energy busting through the mic, man.
Yeah, he is full of energy, but he's full of lessons as well. And so take notes. Enjoy The Richest Man in Town with Dan Funk.
Where I'm coming from with my text to you is I've been thinking about climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, right?
Okay.
Not literally climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, but in that climb, I'm sitting here wondering to myself, because I'm kind of obsessed with this idea of keeping score.
Okay.
Right? And I'm questioning, how do I know how I'm doing? Like if I'm on a trip, if I'm on a hike, you've been backpacking, I've been backpacking. It's kind of nice to know I'm going to start here. This is my destination. After a day, here's where I'm at. After day 2, here's where I'm at.
Yeah.
And you talk about mile markers a lot, right? So in this thing called life, we talked last episode with Kiefer Marino about climbing, that call to be better and that ascent, right? Yeah. How do I know where I'm at? How do I know how I'm doing? What does that look like? What systems can I have in place, right? And I think that's what's been on my mind. Actually, ever since our forgiveness, if you go back to that episode, I kind of pose a question of what's a scorecard for life? What's a scoreboard for life, right? You and I go play golf, 9 holes. You know where you're at, 4 holes in.
Yeah.
You know where you're at, 6 holes in.
Yeah, 25 over par.
Right. You know, every sport has a PR, right? If you're playing individual sport, like if you're a runner, a cycler, a swimmer, you're against a clock. And you know how you're doing because you got this clock. Why don't we in life have something to tell? And I'm not saying we don't. But it'd be awesome if this show is about you and I living a better life and helping other people do it. It'd be great to maybe have that discussion as far as what does it look like, right? Like I am moved by the thing you sent to me through Facebook Messenger on the bucket of balls.
Yeah.
Like that guy, I'm gonna pull it up, right? I'm gonna pull it up and read it just
yeah.
just as a reminder.
Yeah.
So old man cleaning out his garage comes across a bucket of balls.
Baseballs, right?
Yeah. Baseballs.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, I just want to make sure it's not bowling balls,
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's important clarification, especially with content in our last episode.
Yeah, it's true.
So imagine old guy, right? Sunset of his life. And he comes across this memento from his past with small children, right? With his boys, bucket of baseballs. So he literally puts a note on them and puts it out there free.
Right.
Free to anybody. And this is what he says. He says, hope someone can use some of these baseballs in the batting cages. I found them cleaning out my garage. I pitched them to my son and grandson for countless rounds. My son is now 46. And my grandson is 23. I'm 72. And what I won't give to pitch a couple of buckets to them. They both moved away. If you are a father, cherish these times. You won't believe how quickly they'll be gone. God bless. P.S. Give them a hug and tell them you love them every chance you get.
Yeah. I mean,
at 72, brother, that's not the time to keep score. At 72, that's not the time to say, how am I doing?
But I would say that maybe that question is something we're supposed to ask ourselves all the time, right?
Okay, check this out. Funny that you mentioned that, asking ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
You get some harebrained idea of running 10 miles a week. Thank you, David Hill.
Yes, David.
So today, I get the crazy idea to put in a couple miles before the podcast.
I did 2.5.
I did 2.2. So here we go, right?
Yeah.
So we're doing it. We're doing work, chipping away.
Yep.
I listened to a podcast, one of my favorites, Art of Manliness. This episode brought to you by Art of Manliness.
Oh, nice.
Art of Manliness has an author, the author of Insight. I'll put the author's names in the show notes. Sorry, I don't have that name. She proceeds to tell us that her research shows that 95% of people claim to be self-aware. In reality, her research shows that about 12 or 13% are actually self-aware.
So does she give you a definition of self-aware?
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's hear it.
No, there's internal, there's external, right? There's internal about who you want to be versus who you are. External is who does the world see you to be.
Yeah.
Long story. But the bottom line is 80%, give or take.
Yeah.
80% on any given day is lying to themselves about lying to themselves.
That's pretty complex, man.
Yeah. So if I'm keeping score, it's like I'm checking in. Hey, Mike, how am I doing? If I think I'm self-aware, right?
Yeah, but
I'm not, then I'm setting myself up. I'm running off a cliff.
I think that if we're looking at something and we are and we're asking ourselves questions, right? How are we doing? And then we are also doing things about it. I think that, to me, that's what this is all about. I mean, look, we can scientifically break it down and say that every time you ask yourself, if you don't do something, then technically you fall into the category of the person that's lying to themselves about being self-aware, about not being self-aware, and being self-aware, right? We could throw ourselves in that category probably multiple times a week. And I am that guy probably that lies to himself that he's self-aware on many occasions.
100%. Right? I'm 100% in that 80%.
But I think though that you're not giving yourself enough credit, because if you're looking at yourself and saying, hey, I got to make some adjustments, and you're making adjustments, that's to me, that's where the rubber hits the road, right? It's one thing to sit down and make a list, say, hey, here's we talked about this earlier. You said, I made a list of all these things I wanted to do, and I haven't done any of them, right? So it's one thing to keep a list and never check something off the list. And if someone says, hey, have you ever thought about, the things, what you should be in life? You're like, oh yeah, I got a list of it, man.
Oh yeah, check the journal.
Yeah, my journal's full of it, right? Well, what have you done? Well, I haven't done any of it yet, right? But I think if we're, and I don't think there's a time that it's too late to start to be self-aware. Because
okay, but here's one of the questions I have, right?
Okay.
Let's say in my reflection, I realize I'm not physically fit.
You're running 10 miles a week, homie.
Right. No, it's totally different now. So I jump in my car and I go to Dick's and I drop $1,200 on a bike.
Yeah, I like that.
And now I'm going to go cycling.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm cycling for 4 hours.
Yeah.
On a Saturday. And I got a family at home. So now myself is saying, I'm feeling fit. Man, the first time I got on that bike, that hurt, but now I'm feeling fit. How do I get the feedback that I need to make sure that those other bases are covered? Right? How am I doing? What does that look like? Okay, I hate to even bring this up because this is kind of a butt of a joke in my house anyways.
Yeah.
But on your mission,
yeah.
Did you ever have companionship inventory?
Like formally say, let's sit down and have companionship inventory? Yeah. No, but there's plenty of times where like, Luke, you're a freaking inventory.
So the premise is basically you sit down with the guy that you're serving a mission with, and you talk about it. How's the work going? How are the two of you working together, right? And then you apply that to the mission, and then the idea is that lesson sticks with you. And as you get married, have you and Ricky ever had companionship inventory?
Yeah, I could say we have. Yeah.
Okay, keep it G-rated, right?
Okay. Yeah.
But
we absolutely have.
Yeah, and I think that's valuable feedback, right?
Yeah, 100%. And she's initiating companionship inventory because I'm the companion that's gone off the rails, right? That's usually how this works.
Yeah, she's usually the one that's like, you're a beep.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Yeah.
Let me play something for you. This is a lot of why I'm all introspective.
Okay.
Patterson over at Prestige. I just wanted to let you know I got your wellness labs back. I did CC a copy to Dr. Miranda, but I just want to let you know it was pretty unremarkable with the exception of your bad cholesterol. I like below 100. You're at 115. And then your hemoglobin A1C, the marker for diabetes. We like it below 5.7, which indicative of possible prediabetes, and you're at 5.9. So some lifestyle modifications with exercise and sugar and carbohydrates reduction should take care of that. If you have any questions, you can give us a call, but Dr. Miranda should get a copy of this also. Have a beautiful day. Bye-bye.
Hey, so before you jump in, let me just say, Trish Patterson, I think was that her name? She is the most positive deliverer of a message I've ever heard. Right? I mean, I want her to call me when I'm sick. It's like, Tyler, how's it going, buddy? You got 1 day left to live, and woo, have fun, pal. You know what I mean? She was great. I love it. That was great. Now, so you got that staring you in the face.
What? Yeah, like Stephen Mitchell in my head, right? What are you going to do about it? None of that is a surprise.
But you're doing work now.
I am. And honestly, because I am going to be held accountable by you.
Yeah. Right?
There's some systems that, thanks to this podcast, I've actually put in my life, some systems of reflection, some systems of action and accountability.
Yeah.
But it needs to be intentional.
Yeah.
Because if I don't do something about that, you and I were talking, if I don't do something about that, the next call is, hey, welcome to type 2 diabetes.
Yeah.
Come on in, we'll get you some prescription. Right? Oh, welcome to high blood pressure.
Yeah.
Welcome to bad cholesterol. Come on in, we'll get you a prescription. Right?
Yeah.
So I think that there's definitely some work to be done in how I change. And that's kind of the premise of the show, right? How do we change? But when you get a call like that, it really makes you rather introspective.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think like human nature is that, you know, we sit down, we come home from work, right? You spend all day at work, you come home, you know, in your head, even before this call ever occurred, you know, I should work out, dude. You sit down, you grab a bag of chips, you turn on the TV, you eat a few chips, you're watching the tube. You're watching sports, which is the irony of it all, right? You're watching these fully athletic, in shape people play, and you're like, this is amazing, right? Meanwhile, you're just packing on the pounds. And then when someone says, hey, you got a problem, it's like, holy crap, 10 miles a week, here I come. And it's out the door running, right? And I wish it wasn't that way. I'm in the same boat, you know, but you're there. You know what I love?
You know what I love about the plan, actually, though? The old Mike Freeman would have said, fantastic. I'm going to go run 4 miles a day.
Yeah.
10 miles. 10 miles over the course of a week is chump change.
It's doable.
It's doable, right? Small and simple things can make some pretty significant changes. You know, and we've got a mutual friend tonight, mutual new friend, Daniel Funk, is going to be joining us actually shortly. And I'm wondering if he's got answers to things like procrastination, right? To things he might have some insight to help us out, right?
That's why we've got him on the show, right? Because he better be bringing some answers, dude, or what's this all about, man? Right? So let's get him in here.
All right, here we go.
Dan.
Hey, Mr. Guys. Funk, welcome to the richest men in town, brother. How are you?
Good. I'm excited to be on with you guys.
Hey, I'm excited too because we've hyped you up quite a bit here. Just recently, we told our listeners that you've got all the answers.
Oh well, your listeners are going to be highly disappointed. But if I don't know the answer, I'll make up something really good.
Okay, cool. Hey, what? I was just bearing my soul and my medical history to our listeners. And I'm wondering what's your take on what's your remedy for procrastination?
Oh,
you don't suffer from procrastination and putting off changes, right?
Okay. Well, what are we talking about? Are we talking about spiritual stuff, repentance, or are we talking about like work? Because look, procrastination is a pretty powerful tool when you're talking about worldly, earthly things, right? I mean, I do my best work 5 minutes before something's due sometimes, you know? So
no, hold on. So I've convinced myself I do my best work 5 minutes before something's due. I'm not quite sure if that's an accurate statement.
Trust me, I've tried it the other way, and it doesn't always work. So.
Well, no, so I was talking a little bit about lifestyle changes, and we were kind of reflecting on our last guest and this process of climbing, right? Progressing through life and trying to get better. I got a call from my doctor saying, "Hey, there's some pre-diabetic condition. There's some bad cholesterol. You might want to make some lifestyle changes." And you know, there's a book that's called "Change or Die." And 9 out of 10 people that get that call don't change.
I've seen people. I see people around me. I had someone at work recently, an older gentleman. This is an employee, not a resident, and he basically almost died right in my lobby. You know, he's overweight, very unhealthy lifestyle, and he was in the ICU for probably a week and a half, 2 weeks. And he came out of the ICU and the doctor essentially said, look, you're a ticking time bomb. You are going to die if you don't make these changes. And for a couple of weeks, he made some changes, started to lose a little bit of weight, but is probably a month or two later, he's completely back to where he was before. And I'm like, I don't get it. I like to believe if I was in that situation, I'd be like, I'm sorry, I want to stay alive as long as possible. I'll make those changes, but it's true. It's a crazy thing about about humans, I guess.
Yeah, I can't figure that one out.
Wow. Well, I'd like to figure that out. I mean, right? I feel like there's a lot of things connected to that, right? Because, I think change is hard. Change is hard. And if we're, whether it's physical change, like we want to work out, want to get in shape, or it's spiritual change, it's hard. And it's a commitment that has to be made, and it has to be this long-term commitment, right? I mean, I talk to my kids about spiritual things, and we talk about how there's no plateau, right? There's no pinnacle. You're not going to reach the top and then it becomes, I've made it and now I can sit back because everything is good. It's this lifetime pursuit. And unfortunately, habits can be tough to break, and it's easy to fall back into it. Here's the interesting thing, right? I mean, and I don't know, I think there's in Malcolm Gladwell's book, Tipping Point, I believe, he talks about habits, right? He talks about a certain number of hours that it takes to get good at something, right? So you spend these hours becoming...
It's like 10,000 hours or something like that.
Right, yeah. So you spend all these hours becoming good at something, but if you take a fraction of that time away from it, you lose a lot of that progression that you've made, right? And so I think that's the difficult thing, especially when we allow ourselves to get into a position where we've become so overweight, right? That now it's just painful to do the work. Or we've become so far removed from the gospel of Jesus Christ that it becomes painful to get back to where you need to be. I think change is not easy, but change is worth it, right? I mean, look, how long have we been doing 10 miles a week, Mike? 2 weeks? I feel better already, dude. I feel better already.
I was gonna say, you guys look you seem so fit. I'm surprised you're struggling with this weight issue.
I bought a slimming camera for this show, actually. But
I'm a swimmer, right? I'm a swimmer. How's that going for me, right? I got goggles for Christmas because I wanted to declare to the world that I was a swimmer, and I've swam twice.
Okay, all right. But I have this observation though. Okay. I do think there's point totally taken with the spiritual side. It can be hard to come back, but I've often thought, look, I go through periods of time where I'm working out and then I stop working out. Right. I run a nursing home. I had the COVID started in my facility. I stopped going to the gym, and then I got COVID myself. So I haven't been to the gym for a couple of months. When you go back to the gym, it almost feels like you have to completely start back from where you're starting from couch potato. Now, sometimes with the spiritual stuff, I don't think it's exactly the same, because I can't tell you the number of times I've gotten, you go through your ups, you go through your downs, right? Scriptures, when you read your scriptures every day, you pray every day, you're diligent, you feel the Spirit, and then you lax and you don't do it every day. And then when you start doing it again, the Spirit comes back pretty quickly. I've always been surprised at how quickly the Lord comes running back. The Spirit comes running back to you. And so I've always kind of felt like the spiritual side maybe is a little bit different. There's some similarities, but I think the Lord's much more quick to come back to us than the physical man is.
Yeah, I think to that point, I think that the Lord is quick to come back to us. I think sometimes, whether we attach shame or guilt or whatever else, we're slower to come back to him, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the difficult part of it, is to just forgive ourselves and say, look, we made a mistake, or whatever, or I've fallen in some bad habits, and I can turn out of these and get my feet back on the ground. Because like you said, he's waiting there ready to say, let's go. Sometimes we're slow to that, I think. At least, I guess, am I the only guy? Yeah, maybe.
But then where the similarity is there, it's that natural man, right? The natural man is, you stop working out. The natural man is slow to come back. Natural man is slow to forgive ourselves. But you look at the prodigal son, right? He started and his father saw him from a far way off and came running to him. I think that's what the Lord is.
Yeah, but I think, okay, so let's pursue this a little bit, right? Because there's change and then there's become. And I'm interested in that transition, right? So like, let's say I'm working on something and maybe I received some feedback that I'm not the most patient individual. So maybe somewhere I've got a note, hey, be patient, right? Be patient. What would a patient person do here? What would a patient person do here, right? And over time, I'm going to acquire that attribute and become patient, right? So then I don't have to make a note and be like, what does a patient do? Like, oh, that Mike guy, he's super patient, right? And I think obedience is like that. None of us wake up, I'm hoping, none of us wake up and in our to-do list, the first thing on the list is like obey commandments, right? We become, over time, we become obedient. Now there's some things that we're not doing, right? We've got some things that we are working on, and those are probably at the checklist stage. But I think that it would be fantastic for me to just not say run 2.2, right? Or run 10 miles a week. That's just, I'm fit.
But I think though that there's that, if we're looking for this moment where change turns to I am, right? I think that then we're always searching, right? I think that if we just allow ourselves to be in the process, eventually we look back and go, oh, I am that now, right? And I think, like, if you consider your own progression, to go back to obedience, right? At what point did you say, man, yeah, that's it, I got it, I'm obedient to these things? And for me, that's not the case.
Yeah,
I just living it. I'm striving. I'm trying. I'm failing. I'm fixing. I'm working. And then someone says, "Man, you're doing good at this." And I'm like, "Oh, really?" Because in my mind, I'm like breaking everything in my path, you know.
Well, in the end, isn't it? Hey, if I can be a little bit more obedient today than I was yesterday, if I can be a little bit more patient today than I was yesterday. And then sometimes it's like, hey, patient, yes, I'm going to put up that reminder, be patient. But at some point I got to stop and ask the question, well, why am I not patient? What is it about myself that's making me not patient? Is there something here that I need to uncover that will help me be more patient? Is there something standing in the way that I need to why am I not being obedient? Not just help me be obedient, but why am I not that way? Identify those things, and there's probably things deeper that we can change that will help us get to those goals a lot quicker.
Okay, so Dan, take that thought and that one, Tyler, that you've often expressed, right? I am who I am, that people have said to you. Feel that difference.
Yeah.
I am who I am versus, hey, why is this thing not falling in line? Yeah. Why am I not obedient with that particular aspect of the gospel, right? What is it about me? What is it about my background? Why? And doing that work is soul-changing work.
Well, and the I am what I am is your excuse to not have to change too. It's the same thing. Like when I tell people, say, hey, look, just so you know, I can be kind of bossy. That's just who I am. You know, what you're telling me is like, you're a bossy person. People don't like you and you don't want to change for some reason. Why is that?
And I think that whole I am who I am, or, you know, is a hopeless way to live. It's like giving up on this idea that we can progress and that things can be different, which I always find that interesting, because the I am who I am is usually attached to the personality, right? Or the character of that person. It's not attached to their financial situation or their, right? Because they're saying, I'm going to work harder and make some more cash, but I'm going to be a complete jerk to everybody I know because that's just who I am.
That's who I am.
That's who I am. And that's a pretty sad way to go through life. And it's a lonely way to go through life eventually, right? Because I am who I am ends up with just that, right?
Well, another way to say that is like, look, here's why I give myself a pass for mistreating you, because I'm this way. And because of that, I'm just going to mistreat you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and that's in the case of mistreatment, right? In the case of my cholesterol and pre-diabetic condition, I love Hostess products. Right?
Who does?
I am who I am, right? I could just yield to that and be like, Yeah, man. Give me a Twinkie. I'm good.
Yeah, and who you are as a dead man in about 6 months if you don't change that.
That's got to change. That's got to change, or I am who I am is gonna, it's gonna be short lived.
Yeah, I think it's, I think that there's a balance, right? When we're talking about change and wanting to better ourselves to overthinking, right? Mike brought up a book or an author that talked about, 90% of people say that they're self-aware, and according to the research, only 13% are self-aware, right? So you have 80% of those people are walking around saying they're self-aware, but they're not self-aware.
Someone's telling you I'm a very self-aware person. That's probably an indication that they're not, right? Because the people that are self-aware are the ones that are asking themselves, maybe I'm not as self-aware as I think I am.
Right. And it's funny. I have a theory on that anyway, altogether. I was just talking to someone about this the other day. I'm like, if someone has to tell me how great they are at something, they're probably not that great at that thing, I mean, if it's just like, this is who I am, and hey, we should go hang out. You want to go play tennis? And they're like freaking this tennis all-star. I'm like, wow, right? But if they're talking to me about it the whole time, I'm like,
I know.
I got him.
But I got it.
That's so true. Hey, she also says that narcissism is on the rise. Low-level narcissism is on the rise. Like 93% of people answered the question affirmatively that they consider themselves to be a very special person.
Well, that's a loaded question.
I just, before we go further, I need you guys to know that I am a really special guy. And please treat me as such, or I'll never come back.
That, Dan, because here's the thing. If someone approaches you and says, look, I'm doing some research, you consider yourself to be a special person, right? Now, here's what's going to happen. If you say yes, you are a narcissist. If you say no, you are a fatalist, right? So there's just no way out of this, man. You just got to go, I think I'm right in the middle of the road.
Okay, so Dan, let's pick up on your specialness really quick. We've got a mutual friend, right? Nick Anderson,
yes,
on this program, and he reaches out to us and says, "Man, I got a buddy you gotta talk to." Right? So Nick says, "Hey, there's this podcast called Richest Men in Town, and you would be perfect for this program." What goes through your head?
Okay, well, no. The first time I heard about your program is I get this email from Nick Anderson, right? And he's one of my best friends in the world. I love the guy. And just so you know, from his podcast with you guys, the friend that likes to take bubble baths and eat Oreos, rings and Oreos, that's me. That's me.
Dan Funk is
I am bubble bath. Bubble bath, okay? Oreo bubble bath. There's nothing better. In fact, I've got it all ready for when we're done here. Bubble bath and Rima Oreo. But I get.
Just so you know, Dan, before you get going, that's one of the funniest moments in the history of the program, because right after Nick says that, Tyler says, "That sounds like a dirty bath."
Yeah. Thank you. Hey, it's a special.
Hey, we'll get into that.
Yeah, but I get this email from Nick. I'm on his list of 1,000 people he knows, and he's like, "Hey, just so you guys know, I'm on this podcast called Richest Men in Town." Now I get this. We ran a company together, and we were both very successful together, and then we split, and he's continued to succeed. And I'd had some ups and downs, so I see this. I'm like, why don't you just rub it in my face, Nick, that you're making so much money, and these people, you're such an interesting guy. These guys want to interview you, and I have to listen to it, right? And so I was like, it didn't seem like Nick, but so then I listened to it. I'm like, okay, this is completely different than what I thought, and it was very, very different. And then when he asked me, he's like, "Hey, I'm going to talk to these guys. I think you should do this." I'm just like, I mean, it's going to be really boring for them. I promise you can find more interesting people. And then I listened to more of the episodes, and I'm just like, I'm not even in the same league as these. I mean, talk about pressure. not even close. These spiritual giants. I have a life that is just like not even close to what these guys have accomplished and what these guys have done. You know,
well,
I'm listening. I'm like sobbing. I'm like, this is the worst.
Hey, Dan, game recognizes game.
Yeah.
Right. And when Nick Anderson says I got a guy, we're all ears, right? So we've had a pre-show call, and we're excited to have you on the show, and we're excited to hear what life lessons you have to deliver and to share with our listeners. Because the bottom line is your story is not my story, it's not Tyler's story, but somewhere in there, we've learned from this program over time. Somewhere in there, there's something that can help me be better, and there's something that can help somebody that may be struggling with something. So welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're glad you're here, man. It's I think we said it the first time we got on the call with you and Nick introduced you to Mike and I. Any friend of Nick would be a friend of ours, and we're just glad you're here, man. And so let's start at the beginning, right? And why don't you kind of give us some background of how you grew up, kind of your family, and lead us where you are now.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I'm the 7th of 10 children. And so I suffer from middle child syndrome, right?
We picked that up right away, actually.
I mean, look, I like to be in the middle of a lot of stuff going on, but you have to be loud and obnoxious to get any sort of attention from anybody, you know? And, but I grew up, you know, my family, members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, my dad, and my mom is probably the two most perfect people to walk the planet. Right. You know, my youngest memory, my dad's a bishop. My dad's in the stake presidency. My dad's a mission president. My dad's, you know, works in the temple in New Zealand. You know, my dad's currently the temple president in Mount Timpanogos, you know, in Utah. I mean, the guy is the most perfect person, you know, in the world. All 10 kids, all 6 boys, 4 girls, all 6 boys served missions. One of the girls served a mission. Everyone went to BYU. You know, everyone's graduated BYU. I mean, it's the most perfect, you know, perfect family in the world.
Where did you serve? Where did you serve?
I served in the Philippines.
Okay. All right. Awesome.
So, can I share one story about my dad?
Please.
To give you.
Okay. The time is yours. We're actually just sipping back. We're just sitting back. I'm drinking water. I would be drinking Pepsi, but I'm pre-diabetic. So go ahead.
Switch to Diet Pepsi. That's a start. You know, in high school, I grew up in Orange County. Interestingly enough, Nick Anderson, my parents knew his parents. You guys are a couple years older than me. I didn't know him growing up. We met at work, but we lived in the same state. So I grew up in Southern California, Orange County. And, you know, in California, you go to early morning seminary when you're a teenager. Okay. I'm the opposite of a morning person, which I guess is a night person. Most people say. Layman's terms, I'm a night person.
A night out. I think you'd be a night out.
Thank you. Night out. So getting up at 5 a.m., right? At 5 a.m. in the morning, I quit everything. Okay. I quit school. I quit work. I quit church. Nothing should exist at 5 a.m. in the morning. Okay. So, you know, Monday mornings are the worst. I wake up 5 a.m. and I just want to cry because I have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I've got 5 more days until I can actually sleep in. Saturdays are my favorite days. So one Saturday morning in the middle of the school year, my father comes in on a Saturday at about 6 in the morning. Okay. Says, Daniel, everyone calls me Dan. My family calls me Daniel. Daniel, your brother is driving back to BYU and he broke down in Barstow, and I just have this feeling that you need to come with me. Okay. I've very few times in my life have been as angry as I was in that moment at my dad. Okay. My dad is a religious zealot, You know, this feeling is you have this feeling, that's how you manipulate your children to do what you want. So I was so angry, and I fought him, said, no, Daniel, you don't understand. You need to come with me. Okay. So I get out of bed, I go sit in the car, you know, and I am angry. Now it's about a 2.5 hour drive. Okay. And I'm fuming. I mean, if I could, I wanted to break things. I wanted to break windows. So 2.5 hours, we find my brother, and he's broken down. My dad takes a look at his car, and he says, oh, okay, I can fix this. But I need a part. We just need to go find a parts store. And okay, great. This is my day. It's getting even longer. So we get in the car, we drive kind of through Barstow, and then, you know, we're driving by auto parts stores, and we're driving by gas stations. And I'm like, Dad, what's going on? He's like, I just feel like we need to go a little bit further up here. And I'm just absolutely angry. And then we like pass through town, and we're back on the freeway headed out of town, and there's like nothing. And at this point I've given up, you know, I'm done. And, you know, about 10 miles or so, you know, 10, 20 minutes later, my dad's like, I feel like let's get off here. And we get off there, and it's one of those exits where, like, I don't think they even have a bathroom here. Okay. So we get off the exit, and we find this tiny little parts store that probably doesn't have the part we're looking for. And my dad parks, and he looks at me and says, Daniel, I really feel like you need to come in with me. And I give up, and I'm like, fine. I open the door and I walk out. I'm angry, you know, as angry as a teenager can be at their father. And we walk in this parts store out in the middle of nowhere, and I'm standing there, and all of a sudden I hear this, Dan. And I'm like, what? And I turned around, and I saw two of my sister's friends. Okay. They were coming back from BYU. This is before cell phones existed. Okay. Coming back from BYU, their car had broken down. They didn't know anyone. They said, Dan, we have been here all night. We have been praying for a way to get back. I don't know your dad. If you weren't here, we wouldn't have recognized him. Can we have a ride back? And at that point, all the anger I had for my father melted away. I felt like the tiniest person on the planet. Like the tiniest person on the planet. That is who my dad is.
Okay, hold on a second, because that is crazy. All right, that is one of the coolest things I've ever heard. Honestly, I'm like,
what part? What part? The parts store?
Listening to this.
Dan's with him, right?
The whole thing is just wild. But here, can we just talk about this for a second? Like, what does that do to you? One, in the moment, and two, having however many years removed from that, it's obviously a powerful enough experience that you're recalling it again, and that's a story that you tell about your dad. What does that do to you?
The thing that I remember the most is how quickly my anger and my disdain for my dad melted away. I mean, it was an instant. And then I thought about, like, I felt like there's almost this kind of guilt, you know, and it was like my dad understood something and felt something that I was totally not in tune with, right? I was not in tune. I was a teenage boy that I just felt like so unworthy to have participated, to be a participant in that moment. I felt so unworthy of that experience, you know, and it made me incredibly grateful, you know, to a father who loved me enough and who was worthy enough and who was in tune enough with the Spirit to be obedient and not let me, his begrudging, awful teenage son, distract him from what he needed to do. You know, and I also think back, I mean, there's 1,000 things I think about how many moments I've had in my life where I've had a prompting that I've completely ignored.
Yeah.
My dad did not ignore that. How many people
let's,
could I?
let's think about, let's talk about that for a second, right? Because we all know what that feels like, but the confidence that you have to have in that feeling to be driving by auto parts stores. I know the pressure an angry teenage person can put on someone.
Amen.
Right. And if I've got a son in the car who's shooting daggers at me, and he's just like, he knows what he's feeling. He knows it's from God. He doesn't know the end story, but he's confident. And I want that. I want that level of confidence, right? That I can hear it, I can hearken it, and I can heed it.
Well, and here's what I really love, Mike, too, is that, and Dan is, he's brave enough to walk into your room at 6:00 on a Saturday, right? For one, and for two, not to just say, "Hey, Dan, why don't you come with me? I'd really like the company," but say, "Dan, I have this feeling that you need to be in this car with me today." Like, I love the way that's framed, because, you know, there's been moments with my own kids where I've felt like I need to be with them today. And I haven't said it that way. I've said, "Hey, let's hang out. Let's be together. I think you need to let's hang out today." Right. And I love that, just owning what it is. I have a feeling that you need to be with me. I mean, that's just wild.
And I've never forget how he frames that, because it was very, I mean, he had been given a task by the Lord. He didn't know it yet. He had been given a task. The Lord said, "You have to go pick up these two kids. You don't know it yet. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is if you convince your deadbeat son over here to go with you." You know, and it came across, I mean, I have this feeling you need to be there. And the way he framed it at the time made me even more angry at him, because I thought it was like a manipulation, right?
Yeah.
You know, I thought that's just what you tell your kid, like, be afraid, like the Lord's going to punish you, you know, or, you know, I'm preventing you from going out and drinking and doing drugs with your friends by the Lord. If you don't, all these bad things you're going to, you know, but it was it was representative of the task that he was given by the Lord.
But think about what that does, right? So if we were to work on that, if we were to exercise that muscle, and when we hear something, we do it, think about the blessing that you would be to others, but think about how trustworthy you would be to God, right? That he would know that he can count on his servant, Mike Freeman, right? He could count on Dan Funk, because Dan's got a proven record of hearing and heeding my messages. That's not something he can say right now about Mike Freeman. Like, that's definitely something that I don't think I'll ever get on Mr. Funk's level, right? Yeah. But that's something to definitely aspire to.
How does that or does that impact you as an adult in how you listen and how you respond?
Yeah, you know, I've thought about that a lot over my years. I think it affects how I interact with my kids. It's one of those stories that will come back to mind every once in a while. You know, when I need it, a little reminder of, look, this is how important it is to pay attention to those promptings. And it's one of those things, like my dad. I haven't always had a good relationship with my dad. But as I've gotten older and I've seen the things that he's done, it's given me kind of a standard to, like, look, the Savior, we always talk about, you know, the Savior is the example, be like Christ. Well, I don't care who you are, you're not going to be like him in this life, right? It's not going to happen. I can look at my dad and I can say, this is attainable in this life. You can be like this. And he really is. I mean, I don't think he's had a dirty thought in his life. I don't think he's said a bad word in his life. I don't think he's ever been tempted by anything, you know? And you know, I see that example. I'm like, I can't achieve that. I can do that. Maybe might not get there until the latter years, but it's possible. And it's nice to know that there is something attainable like that in this life. It's not impossible.
So talk to me about really quick your kids. You mentioned your kids. Give us some ages.
Yeah, so I have 5 kids, 4 boys, 1 girl. My oldest is 20, and I have 4 boys in a row. 20. I have a 18-year-old. My 2 oldest graduated high school. One of them's going to BYU, Idaho. Then I have a 16-year-old, 14-year-old boy, and then my daughter is the light of my life. She's 12 years old. You know, I always tell my kids, I say, you know, I love you guys equally, but she's my favorite.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
What about your mom?
Oh, my mom she is the perfect companion to my dad. She had 10 kids, right? After the 8th kid, now I'm the 7th. I tell my parents, you should have stopped after 7. You guys were good, right? All right. So she had number 8. And then, you know, the doctors are like, you know, cause she's tiny, right? She's like 5'3". I mean, she's tiny and she's just tiny bones. And you know, like, you can't have any more kids or you will die. And she's like, well, I feel like I have more coming. So, and then she has kid number 9. And then the doctor's pleading with her, do not have any more children, you know? And she's like, well, I feel like there's one more in there. You know, I think, you know, I feel there's one more coming. So we're going to have another one. You know, I think when she got pregnant, the doctor even said, you will die if you do not abort this baby. She's like, I'm having this baby, you know, and it has baby number 10. And then it's like, well, that's all we're supposed to have, and didn't have any more after that. So that, I mean, you know, I guess similar to my dad in that, you know, she's not going to let anything get in her way of doing what she knows she needs to accomplish in this life. And she's incredible. She's completely OCD. Imagine if you had 12 people in your house. How often do you think about what laundry is like? Okay.
Can't imagine.
Think about what cleaning bathrooms are like, right? You do not get through having 12 people in your house if you don't have a little bit of OCD. So my mom was like perfectly built to raise kids. They did a wonderful job. Yeah, so amazing. I love my parents.
How do you honor them today? Leaving the script, right? Leaving the script, hitting you with a question.
Yeah, you didn't ask me that. I'm going to answer one of the questions no, I'm just kidding. Look, I have such a better relationship, you know, and I've gone through a lot of stuff, you know, especially the last few years of my life that have really kind of driven me, because even a lot of my adult life, I had a lot of, I don't know, I had a lot of hard feelings for my dad that I had to work through, and you know, eventually had just a really deep, meaningful conversation with my dad a few years ago. You know, where he's the most humble guy in the world. He's like, look, I realize I was not the perfect father, and I if I could go back, I would do it differently, and here's what I would do differently, and I am so sorry, you know. And like, from that moment, it was important, I think, we rebuilt that relationship at the time we did, because then I started going through some stuff that I still feel like I depend on my parents today like I did when I was a teenager and younger. You know, I call them, I stay with them. I you know, they talk me through my problems. They provide counsel and wisdom, and I listen, and I try to do the things. I mean, it's amazing. I thought I'd have like when you grow up, you leave your parents and, you know, visit them once a year and send them cards, but I need them as much as I did when I was a kid, and they love it. They're more than happy to be there.
Hey, where does that deep, meaningful conversation come from? Did you start it? Did he start it? Walk us through that a little bit. if you can?
I had the company that Nick and I worked at together. We had a guy, his name's Dwayne Boyce, that was kind of a mentor. He's part of this group called the Arbinger Institute. I don't know if you guys have ever read the books like Leadership and Self-Deception.
Yeah, and
Anatomy of Peace.
Airport books.
There you go. But he's one of the guys that wrote the book, and he got hired on, and he just became, he's LDS. He was he stake president in Salt Lake, very humble, amazing guy. And he was a mentor, and he helped mentor just personal things too. And I talked a lot about, he'd ask questions like, which relationships in your life are ones you feel like, you need to work through or aren't as enriching as they need to be. And so I ended up talking a lot to him about my dad, my relationship with my dad. And he really, really encouraged me. He's like, look, you need to go talk with your dad. You need to have that. You need an adult relationship with your father. You have to be able to share some of these things. And I never would have if I didn't have that mentorship from him. And so I did, I went out and visited and had that and said that, basically just told him, say, look, here's some things that I'm angry about, some things that I wish would have been different. And like, I totally expected some defensiveness, we did the best we could with what we knew. Cause I had those excuses before, but again, pretty similar to that first experience of the going out to Barstow, his response was just like, I didn't do it the way I wish I could have done it. And I wish if I could go back, I would. And I'm so sorry. It just melted me. I mean, it was one conversation and it completely changed my relationship with him.
It really is that simple. Not easy, right?
No.
Not easy, but it really is that simple to be able to let your guard down and actually have that open, honest conversation, letting people in and connecting.
Yeah. Look, we spend so much of our lives trying to justify why we feel the way we feel about people and situations. And so we through conversations, and sometimes we build our lives in a way to just justify these hateful, terrible, dark, no good feelings, and it's, you become prideful. And it's not easy. It's, like the conversation we're talking about change, it's not easy. And in fact, the changes that you need to make the most in your life, the ones that are going to be, does this ever happen to you guys on your show?
We just had a first.
It was a first, and that's okay. But,
there we go.
So Dan, you were talking about justifying some of those hateful feelings, or those feelings that we have for others that we're maybe not as close to as we could be.
Yeah, and I think that's why we hold on to those things sometimes, and we spend we spend all of our time just justifying, and it's okay that I feel this way because of X, Y, and Z. It's not me, it's that guy over there. It's not me, it's her over there. In reality, you have to look at yourself. You have to take those justifications away, and it's not easy. It's not easy.
Yeah, I read something the other day that refers to that as sideways energy. And think about the sideways energy that we spend in our lives, not making any progress forward. All of it is justification, rationalization, defensive behavior, right? And not problem solving, not mending relationships, not moving any further down the trail. It's exhausting. It wastes finite resources, and you go nowhere.
Absolutely. And, it's why the Lord, spends so much time trying to humble us, right? I was at work today, and I'm sitting with my whole nurse management team. And this is a team I've struggled with over the last year, really kind of struggled bringing them together. And today, one of them COVID hit us 2 months ago, and it was probably the hardest thing I've dealt with work-wise. and it was very tiring, and it's very difficult. People are dying and people are getting sick, and you can't convince people to come to work. And we're sitting around today and we were talking about just how much stronger we feel together. And someone made the comments like, yeah, this thing has humbled us. This thing has humbled us. It takes humility sometimes for us to tear down those walls so that we can see the things we need to see about ourselves, the areas where we're making life difficult for others. And look, if we're great enough people that we can humble ourselves so that we can see those things, so that we can become the people the Lord needs us to become, great. If we're not going to do that, then the Lord's more than happy to provide us and put us in those situations that absolutely humble us.
Let's talk about that for a second then, because I agree, right? I mean, humility is sort of this springboard for us to progress, right? When we're willing to kind of look internally and say, this is when we're self-aware, Mike, right? And I'm one of the 13% that are self-aware.
It keeps circling back, right?
You guys are one of those, right? You guys are the 14%.
It keeps circling back, because if we're not, right, if we don't have that form, like even Dan was saying, right, sitting down with management team, if you're not putting in the agenda some time to reflect and to get feedback from other people around you, trust me, you're missing stuff.
Well, and so let's talk about that idea of humility. I mean, you've mentioned, we either have to be humble or we have to be humbled, right? And so can you talk about that a little bit, like your experiences of progressing and what that looks like for you? Because I'll share first, Dan, right? Because I will be the first to say that I typically choose the path of being humbled rather than choosing the path of humility, right?
Yes.
So I typically
I'm with you on that one.
Right. I'm pretty good at thinking I've got some things figured out, and then crashing and burning and realizing that I didn't have those things figured out. My hope is, though, as I get older, though, that those crash and burns become fewer and further between, right? Because there's a little bit, hopefully we're learning from that. But
let me ask the two of you a question. When someone you love, near and dear to you, gives you feedback, what's your first reaction?
Well, is it good feedback?
Not good.
Man, you look great today.
How about we'll just call it corrective feedback?
Yeah.
No one ever gives me that. I have no experience with that.
You can't relate to it.
I can tell you this. So
because I clam up.
Yeah, my initial reaction is probably not good. I probably maybe there's some resentment in that. And that the old saying, right? Truth hurts. When you hear those things. The reality is, when I hear those things, especially if it comes from my wife or my kids, I know it's right. I don't want to hear it. I don't like hearing it, right?
So let me ask you, who are you mad at?
Initially I'm mad at them. I'm like, how dare you point out my flaws, right? And then I think as the evening wears on, I begin to be mad at myself. I mean, that's the reality, I start with them. Yep. and
you lash out.
Yeah, try to shame them out of giving me any correction in the future, right? And then I look at myself and
Shut that down. Shut it
down. Then realize that I got to make some changes. So, but life is sort of fraught with that, at least for me. It's like these moments of, in hindsight, I look back and I go, man, if I could have done things differently. There's a lot of those moments, but then. I've talked about this too, like, and Mike, didn't you say to me that you were listening to a podcast that said everything happens for a reason? They're like, screw that, right? And that's not the case. But I feel like that there's things that happen in our lives that are transformative. And I feel like there's things that happen that can be things that can derail us and take us down a dark path if we so choose. But that same event can be a transformative moment, and I think back to, making the decision for me when I was 18 years old, 19 years old, to serve a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and my dad being completely unsupportive of that, right? And I remember thinking, like, why am I doing this? Like, what's the point of this, right? It's causing massive problems in the home, making a decision, which I thought was this good decision. And I literally thought, like, dude, I can bail on this decision and no one's going to care. Like, no one will care, right? But then eventually thinking I'm, stick through it and go for it, right? And let that change happen. Now, 25 years later, right, I can look back on that whole experience and say, man, that was painful and that sucks. And I would never want to go put my kids through that or have anyone else experience that. But man, I'm a whole lot better today for going through that than if I didn't go through it. And that's just one, right? I mean, I could probably fill. If you guys just want to be quiet for the rest of the time, I'll just talk about my problem.
Oh yeah, let's make you the official guest.
Yeah, I thought this was about Dan, but
all right, fine. We'll get back to Dan. All right, geez.
This isn't the Tyler show.
Yeah, your name is on the letterhead, so I guess you can go on rant if you want.
You're my co-guest, Tyler. You're my co-guest on this.
Dan, can you give us some insight into that? Because we talk about humility, compelled to or choosing. And talk about that.
Yeah, look, I think yes, I'm with you. I lived the life of compulsion. Is that the right word? I'm compelled to be humble quite frequently. Probably the biggest, not too long ago, I think I've probably gone through the biggest event that's humbled me in my lifetime, probably with work, and it started back with, again, Nick and I, we were running this company together. We were COOs, co-COOs of this healthcare company. I think at the time, the largest, post-acute care company in California, and 7,000 employees, 12,000 patients. And, I was like, I'm awesome. I'm like, I'm writing large. And, there was a time where it became, okay, maybe it's time for me to kind of go do my own thing. And, through a series of events, I get to a place where I buy my own place. I join up with a friend that I grew up with that I absolutely loved. And anyways, we end up having a falling out that also led to my divorce, which led to me losing everything. I lost my company. I lost my family. I had to declare bankruptcy. I lost my house. I lost everything I had. And I got to a place where, and I fought this is like this year-long process of me just fighting. I had this mentality of like, I'm so awesome. I'm the best thing that's ever happened to this industry. Just as I'm like kind of circling the drain, not learning what I need to learn. And I finally got to a place where I realized the only choice I had was to call, a family member, a brother-in-law who's running my brother's company. It's the same industry, a guy whose boss I used to be. I called him up and I sent him like, look, I don't have any other choice. I need my license for my administrator license had passed to the point where because I hadn't been running facilities, I've been running companies, so I didn't renew my license. And the only way I could get my license is if I started from the absolute beginning as an administrator in training, what I had started 20 years ago. So groveling. And he was nice enough to give me a job as an administrator in training. So here I am. Not only that, I had to go to the worst building in their entire company, in one of the place in California, they couldn't convince anyone to go to. And I wake up one day and I'm like, I'm and I'm an administrator in training, and I used to be the COO of a company that rivaled this company. And here I am, I'm some guy's assistant a guy who I had hired and fired at one point, and now I'm there as his assistant. That was the absolute most humbling experience of my life. And it took me some time to kind of, to kind of get to a place where I was okay with it. But when I've come out the other side, I said, look, yeah, I think that the Lord knows who he wants me to be in this life. I thought I was there. I thought I was walking the path. I was who I needed to be, but the Lord knows who he wants me to be. And he knows that I can't be the person he needs me to be. I can't learn the things I need to learn in this life if I don't have those experiences. And if I'm not completely and totally destroyed down to a place where, I remember this one moment, okay? I remember this one moment where I'm sitting in this house. I can't have furniture. I don't have a job. I can't find it. No one wants to hire me because it had been a couple years since I was an actual COO, and it was too weird to hire me at an entry level position. I could not find a job. And I remember it was dark in my house and just laying. It was a point at where I gained a little bit of a testimony for word of wisdom, because man, if I had a vice in life, I would have gone to it. I wanted to drink. I never drank in my life. I needed something to take this pain away from me, right? I was in so much pain. And because I didn't have anything else I could reach for, I fell to my knees in prayer. I had nowhere else to go. I was destroyed. I was a destroyed man. I fell to my knees and I prayed and I asked the Lord to help. And I'll tell you, just like my dad, the anger, the bitterness that disappeared when I was in Barstow, everything disappeared for a moment. And I was filled with the Spirit. And I knew in that moment that the Lord was in control and that he hadn't forgotten me. He knew who I was. He knew I had an idea that where I was going to be in my life, and that wasn't necessarily where his idea. My path that I thought I was supposed to be on in life was not the path he was going to have me on in life. And that I just needed to have the faith. And that moment, I think it was probably a couple days later after that moment that I ended up calling my brother-in-law and just saying, I'm broken. I need help. I need a job. But I'll have to tell you, it went away for a moment, right? It wasn't like all my problems went away. I needed a 30-second period of time where I felt his help and his love, and I felt that Spirit, everything went away. And then after about 30 seconds, it kind of slowly came back on my shoulders, but to a point where I knew I could hold on to it and I knew I could go forward. And since then, I've never been in as deep or dark of a place I had been at that point. Since then, but I've had moments where I've been like, okay, I need some more of that, that energy. And I've gone back, and instantly, so quickly, the Lord's willing to come and to give you a little bit of reprieve, and then put that back on your shoulders. Let you breathe for a minute, put it back on your shoulders, and let you continue to get through the next day or weeks.
Dan, you mentioned in describing this experience that, all of the things that you lost. Can I ask how long ago that this process started, where things started to unravel for you?
Yeah, look, I had gotten married 20 years ago. About 10 years into my marriage, halfway through my marriage, my wife had come out and said, I don't believe in the church. You know, I think Joseph Smith is a terrible person. I think Brigham Young is a disgusting human being. I don't even know if God exists, right? And it was a pretty tough time in life, right? Because, you know, I'd grown up in this family, 10 perfect children at the time. And we're not all perfect now. In fact, we're far from it now, you know, but you know, this perfect family. And I had this idea of life, like, look, I'm going to go to BYU. I'm going to graduate. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to make some good money. I'm going to be an elders quorum president, and then I'm going to be a bishop, and then I'll be stake president, and I'll be mission president, and who knows from there, right? That was my trajectory. That was where I was headed, right? I just knew that's where I was going. And then I had this big bomb placed in my life of I don't believe anymore, you know, but it's okay if you do, you know, but I don't believe anymore. And so I go through this 10-year period of time trying to reconcile everything, fighting to hold on to you know, to the marriage. I thought I loved being married. I loved being married. I miss being married. I miss having a companion. You know, I miss it. You know, I loved it. But ultimately, you know, it was ultimately her decision that it wasn't going to work. But I fought. I even got to a point, I remember thinking, you know, I'm like, if I'm going to keep my family together, I have to not believe in the church anymore. I have to. There's no way I can have a testimony, believe the things that I believe, and keep my family together. I'm looking at my 5 kids, and I want to keep us together. And so I had to fight through those feelings, you know, and essentially, you know, at the end of it, you know, I'd been coming home, you know, from being the building I bought with my friend was in another state, and I'd come home and my wife would pick me up, and, you know, she'd had some conversations with my business partner without me knowing, and we'd been talking about me, and then had some other things attached with that as well. And it came out that she just ended up like, we're done. I can't do this anymore. And I remember the next trip I went on, I came back, it was the next week, and I walked in my house and I opened it up, and my house was empty. My kids were gone. They were taken, and they had moved from California to Idaho. In fact, in the same city that my business partner, soon to be ex-business partner at that time, you know, had lived in. And so it was just absolutely destroyed, you know. But again, I think back, like I had those moments where I was like, the only way I'm going to keep my family together is if I leave the church, and if I don't believe anymore, I need to not believe, you know. And then to go through, I mean, the Lord knew I had to be humble, because I can't. I mean, it's true, right?
Yeah. You talk about, you mentioned at the beginning when you were relating these events, you said, I've gotten to a place that I'm okay with it. What does that look like, and what's the process of becoming okay with it?
It's a long process, you know, and ultimately I think it comes down, I mean, really, it probably comes down to my own pride, and a need to be seen a certain way by others, a need to be seen a certain way by my family, by my kids, by people at work, by people at church, a need to be seen a certain way, and
like,
you
appearances, keeping up appearances, right?
Yeah, like keeping up with appearances. But, you know, it's like, look, I'm the type of guy who is very spiritual. I'm the type of guy that should be a stake president, right? And so everything I design my life around, these are the things I have to do. People have to see me doing these things. But not only that, my kids have to act a certain way too, right? And if my kids act in any way contrary to that, I get angry at him. I get mad, and life becomes very, very bad. It becomes very difficult and for them, because I need to be seen a certain way, which means they have to act a certain way, right? And it was just this whole process over the last 2-3 years was just this whole destruction, the Lord just blowing that up and saying, stop it. You can't be who you need to be. You can't be who I need you to be if you are holding on to these things. And maybe it's because of my own pride. Maybe it's because of my stubbornness, that the only way that I was going to get over those things was to have these things blown up. It almost become completely naked, figuratively, to say, look, yes, you know how embarrassing it was to walk into a building, 20 years into my career as an entry level to report to a guy that I had hired and fired, as a COO of a company. I mean, you have no choice but to be humble at that point. And I guess that maybe that speaks more to the level of how prideful of a person I've been in my life, that it took that level of humility to go through that. You can't help but be humbled. You can't help but compelled to be humbled.
Yeah. It's almost like the Viva La Vida Coldplay, right? Sweep the streets you used to own.
There you go.
Right.
Exactly.
That's a humbling thing.
Now, just so like, by no means have I arrived anywhere. I'm still trying to build. It's still a day I hold on to. To a lot of my brother-in-law, who I called, who's running, he's an owner in the company. It's become hugely successful. Right? This is a guy that I helped convince to come into this, essentially hired him, and was his boss. And, essentially, I turned down a deal to work to take over my brother's company, in order to become a COO at the company I was at. My brother-in-law goes and he does it, and he becomes successful. And he has this massive, huge house. He drives a Lamborghini, and I go over to his house. I'm still prideful. I'm so jealous. When I do that. But it's easier because I'll tell him, I'm like, dude, I'm just so jealous, because I see that and I'm like, that was supposed to be my life. He's sending kids off on missions. He's doing all these things. And so it's still, I'm not there. I'm still going through this,
So that pressure that you're talking about, that pressure of appearances, have you thought where that comes from? Is that you? Is that the church? Because we've all felt that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I think a lot of it is bred into us. Some of it is for some people that you have parents who lived that way, right? Oftentimes you're outward, you think about it. We go to church. How are you supposed to look? You're supposed to be clean cut. You're supposed to be clean shaven. You're supposed to wear a white shirt, not a blue shirt. You're supposed to, we focus so much on the outward look. Missionaries must look like this. We can't help but make the jump from, what we look like when we go to church is obviously important because we're being told it's important. And we make the mistake, I understand the principle. Yes, we do need to be well-groomed because the things we do at church are very, very sacred, and we need to take those things seriously. And our outward, how we look and how we approach those sacred things need to reflect the sacredness that we approach those things with. But I think
that's the key, right? That's the key, is somewhere in that process, we have to know the why.
Yeah.
Right. It's not like Tyler's mom would say, it's just because I said so, right? That's not what it is. We have to understand that the Sabbath day is this, and this is how we go to church, and this is why we do what we do. Otherwise,
it's almost like and we can't stop. And it's our own fault because we make assumptions, and because we don't maybe fully understand, or maybe we get a little bit of the why, but we think that it applies to everything in life. And then all of a sudden it turns into, well, look, not only am I wearing a white shirt and tie, but all 4 of my sons under the age of 5 are wearing white shirts and ties. And not only that, they're wearing white shirts and ties until they go to bed Sunday night. And not only that, we won't be caught dead watching anything unspiritual on TV. In fact, we won't watch TV. You're going to read scriptures all day. And all of a sudden, it just kind of, it's like this dam breaks, and this flood of assumptions we make about the true and real intentions of those other things just take over our life completely, and we get so lost in it. And all of a sudden, church and the gospel becomes more about how we look to others. And we make the mistake that because I wear a white shirt and tie and go to church every Sunday, that I'm going to make it.
It becomes the social club as opposed to the purpose of it, right? I mean, and I totally agree with you. And I think that, Mike and I have had this discussion many times. I've probably said it on this podcast, but church is a red carpet affair, right? We dress up, we pull up, we get out, we do the walk, we let the paparazzi take some pictures of us with all the kids, the 2.5 kids, right? And
I got this question for Dan.
Yeah.
Through all of this, did church help or hurt?
Let's add to that, Dan, for a second, because did church help prior to things imploding, and what did it look like post things imploding?
Because I know the answer. I know what that answer should be.
Right.
I'm curious, though. Now looking back, was that a chore to go, or did you find solace? Did you find the thing that you needed to go through?
Oh my gosh. There are a lot of well-intentioned people at church. Okay, there's a lot of well-intentioned people at church. But all of a sudden, when you go and you're the guy whose wife doesn't believe anymore, or you get to the point where you're the divorced guy, you feel like you're a failure in so many ways, and not necessarily because of the choices I made. Look, when we got married, we got married, we were at BYU. I mean, we were on the same path. We had the exact same goals. And at some point that changed for her, and it didn't change for me. And it became very, very difficult because I think we're so ingrained that, look, if you are the one that has the five sons under the age of 4 that are all white shirts and ties and talking about and wearing future missionary tags, you're spiritual. Okay. If you're the guy with a wife who doesn't even believe anymore, dude, we hope you make it. There's plenty of time in spirit world to learn what you need to learn when you get the other side. And maybe you can, maybe you'll make it, buddy. You'll make it. It's funny because even I remember I get my feelings hurt sometimes because all of a sudden you don't get invited to stuff because you don't have a wife who maybe is friends with other really spiritual, because she didn't want to hang out with people that could only talk about the temple and absolutely hated it when people were always like they come and want to be your friends just so that they could try to convince her to come back to church. And in reality, she's like, we would never hang out in real life. Why would I hang out with you right now just because you want me to go to church? And so you become more and more ostracized and you stop getting invited to places. And then when you become divorced, I think I shared with you guys before, I remember I'd sit in that house. I was in Utah where your ward's your block. And I would, on Sunday afternoon, by myself, and I'd sit at the window and I'd see every couple in the ward car pull up and park across the street at the I think it was the primary president's house and her husband, the bishop in embryo, waiting to go for when they all line up there and are having dinner and they're all, oh, we're so awesome. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, you feel so left out. It's not designed necessarily, but so that's church. But what did help was the gospel.
That's right, Dan. And I think that's right at the core of all of this, right? If we look at this, because there's a lot of people who are in your shoes and have gone through similar things that are sitting here thinking, I dread going to church on Sundays, right? Because of the same things that you're describing. And the reality is, at some point, we have to get to that realization that it's not the building, it's not the people in the building, it's the things that are being taught in the building, right?
Yeah, but this thing, I can't let this go, because we understand that the church is made up of people, and people are not perfect, right? But in the gospel of Jesus Christ is, and there's that gap that even Dan was talking about before, right? Where, there's Jesus Christ and his standard, his perfection is the command, but we're given folks in our lives that make attaining that possible. But that gap should not be that wide, right?
So,
I made a note to myself, listening to Dan, and Dan, I so appreciate your show up today. I so appreciate your vulnerability, because here's the thing. Not going to lie, Freeman's, if we knew the Funks and that went down, we'd be over here praying for the Funks. You know what we should be praying for? The Freemans should be praying for the Freemans to learn how to serve the Funks. Yeah. We're not praying, we would say things like, bless them that they might have the strength, that they'll feel close to thee, right? That they'll get through these challenges. No, we need to pray that we can know how to serve you, that we can learn how to empathize with you, right? And I'm not saying that the ward's got to invite Dan over every night for dinner.
No, in fact, don't. Don't. And that's, yeah, sorry. Keep that. Continue that. But put a pin in that one.
I think it's so important, right? That we learn how to succor the people that are going through the challenges. Because honestly, we are his hands, right? Heavenly Father answers people's prayers. Most often he answers them through other people. And it's not, the answer to Dan Funk's prayer isn't going to be some snide comment in Elders Quorum about you not having a wife.
Look, I agree with you, Mike. I think that there's this, to me, right? There's this we could have this deeper discussion of conversion and like where we're at, because, we could all relate stories where we felt like, whoa, like I was judged harshly there. And we could all justify real quick why we don't want to be there anymore. Right. Yeah. I mean, it's super easy to do. And I think we've got to look past that and see where we're at. Right. Yeah. We've got to evaluate immediately why we're there.
But there's no way that in this day and age, as hard as it is, there's no way that one of the hardest things about a hard thing is going to church.
So
that's a problem.
And I have to say this though too. In those moments, I have those quiet moments where I'm sitting, like, yes, every Sunday it seemed like is, and still sometimes it's hard. Do you guys remember going to the singles ward? Imagine going to a singles ward when you're in your 40s. Slit my wrist, please. Don't make me, right? Because I only go there because it's almost worse going to the family ward by yourself, right? But what I've thought so many times as I sitting there in the back of the gym in sacrament meeting, there was always that calm, quiet voice that just reminded me, look, you're not necessarily here for friends. You're here to commune with the Spirit. You're here to partake of the sacrament. You need to rise above that. You're here to renew your covenants, and you're here because the Lord asked you to be here.
Right.
Get over it.
We have to progress past the social club. I mean, so look, my wife and I, when we were first married, we lived in Arizona. Okay. It was a great place. We had a great time. Bought our first house. Remember, the bishopric comes over to say hello and welcomes us to the ward. We invite him in. He sits down. He doesn't sit down. He proceeds to walk through my house. He comes back in. I'm thinking, what is this guy up to? And he says, I don't see a picture of the temple in your home. That was like immediate judgment for not having, and it was all I could do to not physically accost him, throw him out of my house, and never darken the door of that building again. I mean, honestly. But the same thing, right? I have this realization, and I remember telling my wife this, here's the thing. I go to church not to see any of those people in that building. I don't care. I go to church so I can get something out of it. I can figure out how to be a little bit better, and hopefully those feelings towards some of those guys will soften, right? Because I think that's where we need to be. Because if everybody in a church building had conversations like we're having right now, this whole idea of, we talk about ministering in the church, it's almost become as cliche as home teaching, right? We throw it around like nothing, but the reality is, if we took the time to get to know people, and not to know them because we want to put ourselves in a position where we can say, well, at least I'm not Brother Funk, right? We want to be able to say, I know him, and if you get to know him, that's a solid dude. Your life's going to be better for it, right? And I think that's where we need to be. That's where we need to be targeting ourselves.
And I love the church.
Yeah.
Right. I joined the church at the age of 19. I had a spiritual experience with prayer in the Book of Mormon, and I will never, ever forget that moment. Ever. That being said, we, as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, need to do better. We've been taught powerfully this general conference on the culture of Christ.
Right.
And that needs to be the culture that people feel when they come into our buildings.
Amen.
Period.com, call your mom. Right? When they come into the building, they need to feel love. We need to cast aside judgment, and we need to be about sinners getting better. That's it. And we're not there.
Right. That's that whole thing.
Thank you for enduring well, right? Thank you for going through it. But again, going through it shouldn't be an arduous experience on Sunday.
Well, it's the whole principle of if you're sitting in a pew and the person to the right of you smells like alcohol, and the person to the left of you smells like cigarette smoke, and you're judging them, then you're all three in the right spot, right? Because you're
you belong there.
You belong there, right?
Your sin just doesn't smell.
Yeah, that's right.
And look, I keep thinking back to, I think back to the example of my dad, right? He lived a life in a way where he was worthy of those promptings. Okay. And sometimes they didn't make sense. I wasn't necessarily a project to my dad, but the Lord prompted, hey, you need to do this. Your son needs this, right? I think it's the same. Look, I don't want to walk into a ward and become a project by any means. Okay. Don't invite me over just because that's the thing you do. Right. I think we just all live lives that were in tune with the Spirit. And every once in a while, the Lord might tell you, hey, go ask this or go do that. Follow those promptings, and then you'll end up doing the right things. If you try to come up with what you should do on your own, if I develop my own plan, and this is my entire life, if I develop my own plan, okay, he's new, he's divorced, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. I'm not going to do the things I need to be doing. You've got to do the Lord's plan, and that takes patience, humility, worthiness, and listening to those promptings and acting on those promptings.
So somebody going through what you have gone through, maybe listening to you in a couple weeks, what would you say to that person? Maybe they've gone through a divorce recently. They've gone through a crisis. What would you tell them?
I don't know what I just want to give them a hug. All I want to do, I'd be like, dude, I know it sucks. It gets better. It's not going to be fun going through the process. There's going to be a lot of dark times. There's going to be times you're not going to want to get out of bed, but just come here and give me a hug, and I'm here for you. You tell me what you need, that's probably what I'd say. I'd probably be more just wanting to give him a hug. Probably nothing I'm going to say to him is going to make any of the pain go away. Just like buckle up, endure, get through it, embrace the suck. You'll get through it. It does get better. There's light.
And I would
That's
say,
the last thing you want to hear too. So many people would say, "Oh, it gets better. You'll get through this." It's like, well, screw you. It sucks right now. You know.
But I think that the sentiment of I would just want to give him a hug. Like, to me, that's ministering. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes we think like, well, I should have this at the ready sermon I can give and pull out these scriptures and quote these people, and this will help people get where they need to be. And dude, my experience is just that. Like, sometimes it's just, let's just cry together and let's have a hug, you know, and that'll get us where we need to be, you know, just as quick as a good verse in the scriptures. I love that. I love that thought. So
hey, really quick, if I could ask, it's kind of cart before the horse. I think we got into some of the things that have been happening recently, but where was it? So your seventh kid, everyone's lining up, everyone's looking perfect, going to church. Where does faith become real to you? Where does faith become a source of power for you in your life? Can you look back on your life and point to a time or a moment?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because I think there's been a few levels of that for, you know, if I look, or my earliest memories, I think I was one of those. I feel blessed because I think one of my gifts of the Spirit is testimony, right? I think I was just kind of born. I just kind of knew. I just kind of knew, but I didn't always know for myself, you know. So I remember my mission. It was my very first area, and we found this guy's in the Philippines, and we weren't allowed to teach people that were Muslim, just because of the others of their faith would do bad things to you and them if you did. But for some reason, we found this guy that was Muslim, and he spoke very good English, and it was my first probably month of my mission, and I liked speaking English. Because my companion was Filipino, didn't speak very good English. So it was just kind of nice. So we ended up teaching him, and we're like, I'm going to teach you first discussion, and we're going to do it in English. And so we went to his house, and I went through the first discussion, and I remember teaching him about the prophet Joseph Smith, you know, and I remember testifying and saying, I know the prophet Joseph Smith was a prophet of God. And if you pray to God, he will tell you that Joseph was a prophet. Immediately, and I thought the man was listening, and he's listening and he's not saying much. After I said that, he looked at me in my eyes and he said, brother, elder, I know that there is only one God, and that God is Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. And if you pray to Allah, you'll know that Muhammad was his prophet. And it kind of blew me away. And I remember we ended after that. Okay, thank you, brother. And me and my companion, it was nighttime. It was our last. We're walking back in the Philippines, you know, dark around us, and we're just quiet. I was walking with my companion. We're just absolutely quiet. And then I remember looking at my companion, like, elder, that guy knew his church was true as much as I know my church is true. That moment, I was totally devastated because it was up that moment. I had been living on other my parents' testimony. I always knew, you know, but I didn't know for myself. I knew because my mom knew, my dad knew. My testimony wasn't my own. My faith at that point was my own, and it scared me as a missionary. And I said, you know what? I had never, maybe I read the Book of Mormon, but I never prayed and asked if it was true. And so I'm like, I'm going to start studying. I'm going to study the scriptures. I need to figure this out for myself. And it was probably a year and a half where I was with this companion, my second to last area. Thank you, Lord, for taking so long. But my second to last area, I was with this guy. He's one of the missionaries that was like, he was a senior companion and got demoted to my junior companion. And he was, you know, he was my project. I had to fix him, right? And I was so frustrated with him because all he wanted to do is hang out with members. All I wanted to do was go trap. And he hated me for that. And we had a particularly bad morning, you know, and he got
companionship inventory.
Oh my gosh, that wasn't happening. Okay. It wasn't happening. So he went to the shower, and I remember that morning, I was just so devastated. or I was so frustrated, and I got down on my knees. I'm like, Lord, I need your help. And in that moment, that's when I received my testimony. In that moment, had I opened my eyes and I saw Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ standing in front of me, I wouldn't have known any better than I knew in that moment the reality of God and the reality of this church. And that burden of helping my companion was lifted. And I remember our first appointment that day was a first discussion across the street from our apartment. And it was my turn to teach about the first vision. And it was the first time in my life that I looked someone in the eyes and I said, I prayed and I asked, and I know that Joseph Smith is a prophet of God and that this church is his restored church on the earth. You know, and at that moment, my faith started to became my own. It was no longer my parent. I'm so grateful for parents, you know, that imbued these things in me my whole life, that it instilled in me the desire to go on mission. And I always knew, it was never a question I was going to go on a mission, but I had to take that step myself. And I can't tell you the number of times, even through everything I've gone through over the last few years, you know, the times I'd heard this talk on my mission from Jeffrey R. Holland. And I don't know why my whole life, this talk stuck with me, because he talked about the prophet Jeremiah. And the prophet Jeremiah had been called at a young age to be a prophet. And every time he taught and he preached, he was yelled at. He was stoned and he was thrown in jail. And he had gotten to a point where he was so down. He said, you know, I'm done. I can't say your name anymore. You know, and then he makes this comment. He says, but the word was in me to the point that I could not stay. His testimony was in him to the point where he could not keep his mouth shut. And I always knew that was my favorite scripture until I got to that moment where I was saying, the only way I'm going to keep my family together is if I say the church isn't true anymore and I stop believing. And the two things that go through my mind at that point was that moment on my knees as a missionary, that I cannot deny what I felt at that moment. And that scripture from Elder Holland's talk, you know, that my testimony is in me. I cannot deny it. I cannot stay. I cannot deny it. And it was that moment, you know, I'm grateful because I studied all sorts of, I have a brother that left the church. I studied everything he gave to me to try to convince myself. But from that point, I can't deny it. The church is true. And whatever that meant for my family and whatever that meant for me, I knew the church was true and I had to stay faithful. And it was shortly after that I went through everything that I went through, you know, and I had those. So I'm convinced I had to go through those things, but I can't deny the church is true.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. You know, we ask about hinge moments all the time. That's a hinge moment. That is like the dictionary definition of a hinge moment, right? Where everything pivots. The story of Dan Funk pivots on that day, that moment on your knees. And I think we've all had those moments. And I think as a dad, that's the question now, right? How can I foster those types of experiences? Our family recently had the missionaries over and we were reading Enos. And I told my kid, one now, because one's in college, I don't know what 10 would be like, right? Like I got two. But I let him in. I just let him in. Like all of my hopes as a father is that when you're in your moment of wilderness, whatever that looks like, that there will be words. Maybe it's Elder Holland and Jeremiah. Hopefully it's mine right? Maybe it's friends, maybe it's leaders, but that there will be words that will come to your mind thanks to the Holy Ghost, right? In John, we know the Holy Ghost, one of its jobs is to bring all things to remembrance. And in that moment, they'll have what they need. And it'll be their choice. Do I latch onto that? But the second they grab hold of that thought, right, it'll be theirs. And then they'll be held accountable for what they know and not what their dad knew or not what their mom knew. But we have to have those moments, right, where it becomes theirs. And
yeah, I think, how
sounds easy, right? It's not easy.
No, but that's the reality of life, right? That we, regardless of what the situation is that we're in, everybody's going through some stuff, right? We've got to be able to find those things that we can lean on. Dan, given all that you've experienced and where you're at now, and what gives you hope these days?
Probably, yeah. It's such a hard question to answer, because when you say hope, like what do you mean hope? Is it that thing that keeps you going, keeps you getting out of bed, that keeps you motivated, and things like that. I live for my kids, and my kids, my kids give me hope. I'll give you an example. Conference was this last weekend. An absolutely amazing conference. One of the things that's hard is all my kids live with their mom, who I can see them, I get it every other week and on summers and all that stuff, right? But they spend a majority of their life, with their mom and her philosophies and what she believes and what she thinks, and so, it's easy for me to kind of lose hope for what that means for my kids, because they don't go to church. They only go to church when they're with me and I force them to, and so I had my son, and I pray for them every night, and I'm just like, please, Lord, just let me know what I can do. Please help my kids find that light. And, I'm listening to conference, and I end up texting my second oldest son, who's at BYU Idaho right now. It's his first year, and I just text him like, almost kind of jokingly, hey, so you enjoying conference? Kind of as my jab at like, I have to remind them that conference is important. He sent me a picture of his feet with a picture of conference on the TV. He had gone over to his friend's house, and was watching conference on Saturday. Not even Sunday. Everyone watches conference on Sunday. It was on Saturday. And I remember in that moment on Saturday, I started to cry. I don't cry that often, but I started to tear up, and I was just overwhelmed with gratitude to the Lord. That gave me hope that my children aren't lost to the gospel. My children aren't lost. That, again, the Lord knows what I'm going through, what my kids are going through. He knows what I need. He knows what they need, and he's there. So that gave me hope. Those types of things give me hope.
Well, Dan, look, this has been unbelievable tonight. And it's funny because there's two thoughts that I had as we're talking tonight. I had one was, man, how cool is it, the web of connections, right, that we have in this life. Mike and I have a conversation with Nick, after years later, right, Mike, of running into him in Redding, California, and Nick comes on this show and then introduces us to Dan Funk, and I'm super grateful for the time tonight. A couple things that I take away from talking to you. You mentioned multiple times tonight experiences you had where your burden was lifted, right? For a moment, your burden was lifted. And I think, and I don't think, I know, I'm going to even go that far, Mike Freeman, that I know that someone's going to be listening to this podcast and hear your words and be in their own personal crisis and be reminded that they can reach out and have their burden lifted. And honestly, like, that's what this is about. It's about people coming together, sharing our experiences, and hopefully someone learns something from it. I'm a better man from knowing Dan Funk. I know that much tonight, Mike Freeman.
Hey, Tyler Gould, can I share something really quick?
Yeah.
So much. It's so I've learned so much listening to your story, Dan, and I really do appreciate it. I am curious to know, what does the rebuild look like? So in your mind, as you look out 5-10 years from now, what does that look like?
You know, it's interesting. It looks a lot different than, though I should say, the way that I look at it a little bit differently than maybe I did 5-10 years ago. Because what the rebuild is more about relationships. You know, it's where I'm more focused on here's where I want to be in my relationship with my kids. Here's where I want to be on my relationship with my parents, with my siblings, my sisters who've helped me. You know, here's what I want to be, and I want to just be okay with wherever I end up in life. You know, wherever I end up in life, the thing that's going to be the most important is just my relationships. And you know, it's interesting because I think about, again, you know, the title of the podcast, the richest man in town, you know, and really, you know, for me, it's, you know, the things I want to, I want to accumulate the only those things that I'm able to take with me when I die, right? I think those are the riches. That's what makes you rich in life, are the things that you're able to accumulate in this life that you get to take with you when you die into the next life. And that's why, you know, building those relationships with my kids and the love that I want them to have for me, and the richness of those relationships with everyone. That's what it looks like. That's what I want to focus on.
So would you say that that's something that you maybe learned the hard way?
Absolutely.
It wasn't always like that.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Look, again, I think I said it before. The things that we need to learn the most in life about ourselves are the things that are going to be the most difficult. The changes the Lord wants us to make in order to be the people that He needs us to be in this life are the ones that are going to be the most painful and the most difficult. And that you may want to ask yourself, look, if you know, I may be avoiding changes. If you're avoiding changes just because there's something that you're going to have to do that's going to be difficult, don't. Because the fruit of that is just as painful and as terrible as it is. You know, it's sweet on the other side. I believe that the fruit can only be as sweet as the pain you go through to grow it. Can't be any more. It's not going to be any less.
Yeah, that reminds me of this. I think there's a C.S. Lewis, right, on the gardener, and the gardener taking wax at trees, and the tree's like, "What are you doing?" Right? But the
currant bush. God's the gardener, right? Currant bush. That was D.H. Roberts.
Yeah.
Nice. I like it.
Love that talk.
Well, hey, we've spent some time together, man, and I love everything that you've shared with us. It's a Wonderful Life. Christmas coming up soon, right, Tyler Gould?
Amen.
the most wonderful time of the year. In that movie, we have our hero, George Bailey. And George Bailey goes from on a bridge ready to end everything to wanting to live. And at that end of the movie, his little brother, the war hero, comes in and toasts George Bailey as the richest man in town. That's where we get our name, and that's how we wrap up every show. So Dan Funk, what does it mean to you to be the richest man in town?
Counting the number of people that will miss me when I'm gone.
How do you want to be remembered?
It was hard, but he made it. It was hard. He's beat up. He's black and blue, but gosh darn it, he crossed the finish line. He crossed it with honor.
I love that. I would say that there's a couple people here with Mike and I tonight that count ourselves as fans of Dan Funk.
Actually, when you leave, Dan, Tyler and I are going to fight to be president of your fan club.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what that looks like in a Zoom room, but it's going to go down.
It's happening. But
I've got a T-shirt for you. Whoever wins, I got a T-shirt for you.
Dan, I'm just grateful for what you've shared tonight. It's important, these conversations are important that we have them, and I'm convinced that there's someone that's going to listen to this who's going to be affected. But selfishly, tonight I learned some things about what I need to do and where I want to be and how I want to improve. And for that, Dan Funk, I'm grateful, man. I'm glad you're part of the richest men in town, and we want to keep close. So
Tyler, man, we got to be better.
You got to.
We got to be better. And if this little podcast project can help other people understand the urgency to get better, and if Dan's words can help us understand that urgency, let's go. All right. Dan, hats off to you, man. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you, brother.
Good idea, Ernie. A toast to my big brother George, the richest man in town.